Hi everyone, it's Chris from My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop, and I am so excited today to be able to walk through a few of my favorite things to do when it comes to doing the mini quilts. These are the brand new mini quilts from Kimberbell, and today's lesson we're going to focus on the February mini quilt. This 12 by 12 design is absolutely adorable. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. All right, so this quilt consists of several different blocks. This one right here is a 4-patch, and we're going to do them as little small squares, and then we'll bring them together, while the other blocks are all the same size. So all together, this comes together as a 4-patch, which is really easy to do. And we're going to be able to have a ton of fun embroidering this with the glitter applique sheets and the leather and the puffy foam. Everything here is just as cute as can be, including, might I say, the background quilting. Take a close look at this adorable background quilting that you're going to see throughout the project. And just so you remember, the background quilting designs can be found at kimberbell.com. And so if you will use the affiliate link that you see right below this video, it will take you right to kimberbell.com to these adorable background quilting designs, and you can download those there. But everything else is included on your CD, and we even have kits at mygirlfriendsquiltshop.com if you are looking to make this into something just like the one you see here. All right, so are you ready to get started at the embroidery machine? Let's go ahead, and before we do that, we've got some prep work to take care of first. So let's go ahead and open up our instructions, print them out if you need to, and let's go to find out what we need to cut and how we need to prepare our fabrics. All right, so what I've done here is I went ahead and printed out my instructions, put them in a 3-ring binder, and now they're easily accessible. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. One of the things that it shares on page 3 is a getting started. And these are just kind of some tips that they have that you may want to be aware of, especially if you've never done a Kimberbell project before, is maybe perhaps you go ahead and cut these and then you put them in little bags. And that just helps keep everything organized. So that's kind of nice. Oh, I should also mention your embroidery thread colors are listed here. And of course, it's not the specific color because every brand is so different. But if you match up pretty closely to what you see here, you're going to be good to go. So let's go ahead and flip the page. We're now to pages 4 and 5. Now this is where we're going to spend the majority of the time during this lesson is between these two pages, because we can see here, these are the fabric requirements. In fact, it even tells us, the exact fabric that is being used in each piece, and our binding and backing as well. And then we have what is really wonderful, and I don't know of any other designer who does this, but they've included fabric cutting diagrams, which are so helpful for when it comes time to cutting. So let's go ahead and begin from the very top. First off, we have fabric 1. Now I have my little kit here that makes this very simple and easy to figure out, right? I'm going to go ahead and take this piece. It's the same piece that matches up with my swatch right here in the book. And it tells me that this is going to be for the letter E. All right. So what do I need? I need a 2.5 by 3 inch cut. Well, if I come over here, I'm going to see exactly the way to cut it. Now, it really doesn't matter when you only have one piece to cut out. You could do it this way, you could do it this way, it doesn't matter. But it is nice and comes in handy when you have some multiple cuts from one fabric. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and first begin cutting 2.5 inches, and then I do a subcut at 3 inches, just according to that diagram. So I'm going to take my ruler here, and you'll notice that, I could take this to the ironing board and actually press that out. However, I'm going to be able to get to 2.5 inches even before I get over to that fold. So there's no need for me to worry about that right now. So I've got 1, 2.5, I'll go ahead and trim that. Set that aside. That's for what we like to call stash around here, right? And now I'm going to rotate it so that I can subcut it. And this says to subcut at 3 inches. Okay, so I happen to have a 3-inch ruler right here. I'll go ahead and use that right now to my advantage here. What is that? Stash. There you go. So my first piece needed is already cut out. Okay, so that was pretty easy, right? Let's move on to something perhaps a little more challenging, and that is I'm going to take the fat 16th right here. This is fabric number 2, and I am going to be using quite a bit of this piece. And so before I begin cutting, my tip here is to definitely press out those wrinkles. All right, so let's go ahead over to the ironing station and do just that. So let's take a closer look at the instructions. If you take a look at this, it tells us we have a fat 16th, and we're going to cut a 2.5 by 2.5 inch square for the you plus me heart, the 6 by 4.5 for the gentleman, bird, and body, and the 1.5 by 1.5 for the ladybird, heart, and heart 1. Okay, so with that being said, sometimes it can be a little confusing as to how to go about cutting this. But again, let's just take a look at the instructions. And it tells us that we're going to make a 6-inch cut first. All right. And then we subcut that to be 4.5 inches the other way. Let's go ahead and do this together step by step. And you'll see how easy this really is. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and place my fabric down here on the mat, and I'm just lining it up against another line, and let's take a look. It wants me to do 6 inches. All right, so I can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut it all the way down, and this is where sometimes people get a little confused, is they feel like they have to cut it this way and then this way, and then they're trying to finagle and make more cuts, right? You don't have to worry about that with this method. We're just going to go ahead and cut it all the way down. Okay, remove that for stash. And now, with that being done, I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to do a subcut. All right, so it's going the opposite direction. And my first subcut, let's take a closer look, is 4.5 inches. After that, I can do another 2.5 inch square, and I can do a 1.5 inch square. But for right now, it's at 4.5. So we'll go ahead and line this up right here, and I'm at 4.5 inches. Okay, so I've got that piece done, and now all I need is a 2.5 and a 1.5 inch square. And look, I've got plenty of fabric to do that. So I'll go ahead and bring my ruler over to the 2.5, 1, 2.5. Set that aside. And now I'm going to turn this one and do it at another 2.5 inches. And what is the piece I have left? I need to do a 1.5 inch square. So I'm going to go ahead and use this same piece right here. 1.5. Set that aside. Turn it again so that now I can do 1.5 once more. And I have a 1.5 inch square. There we go. I've got all 3 pieces cut out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do one more piece with all of us doing it together, and then the rest is up to you. All right, I know you've got this. So let's go ahead and take a look at fabric number 8, and that is the white polka dot. All right, we'll pull this out. And here it tells us we need to have an 8.5 by 8.5 inch square, as well as 2 5.5 inch squares. So how do we do that? Well, first off, take a look. We've got lots of folds here. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly get those out before I begin cutting. So now I'm back at my cutting table, and I could just lay this out, flat, one layer, but I find it a little cumbersome to cut this way. So what I like to do is I like to take the bottom of my fabric and simply bring it up to the top. So it is folded in half, and you actually have 2 layers, all right? This just helps me to manage my fabric a little bit better. So here, I'm going to make my first cut at 8.5 inches. All right, so here we go. And right here is 8.5. There we go. Go ahead and toss that aside. And now I need to do a subcut. So in order to subcut, what am I going to do? I'm going to turn this around the opposite way. So I'll come from over here, and I'm going to do an 8.5 inch square. So here we go. All right, so there's that one. And now it tells me I need 2 5.5 inch squares. Well, I could cut them one at a time, or let's see if I can actually get 2 5.5 inch squares out of this. Let's take a closer look and see. Yeah, it looks like I can. Now, if you've got a selvage here, make sure to not include that selvage. You don't want that in your fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly trim that off. All right. And bring these 2 together. All right. And now I can go to 5.5 inches squared one way. But that's not a 5.5 inch square, is it? So we're going to go ahead and rotate that once more. Notice again, there's 2 layers of fabric going on here. And 5.5 inches this way. All right. Voila, there we go. We've got our 2 5.5 inch squares. We have our 1 8.5 inch square, and we're ready to go on to the next piece. So continue the same method with all of your cutting, and before you know it, you will be ready to go and have even more fun when you're at the embroidery machine.